For anyone who has been following my channel, you'd probably already know that the one character in MLP that I relate to the most is Fluttershy. Even though I do relate quite a bit with Twilight and Applejack as well, Fluttershy's episodes tend to hit home with me more than any of the others. The lack of self-confidence, the desire to avoid conflict, even the deep-rooted fear of ever allowing yourself to get angry. I often see a lot of myself in Fluttershy's character, and seeing her overcome these kinds of circumstances is a real treat. But just because I can easily relate to the struggles in this story, I have to admit that there are some issues that keep it from being truly great. As the episode begins, we see Fluttershy feeding her animals. Once again, Fluttershy is putting up with Angel Bunny's less than agreeable nature, although I have to admit that this episode shows Angel at his very worst. I was actually surprised to see Angel slapping Fluttershy here, as this goes beyond just being spoiled. This kind of behavior is a very strong sign of an abusive relationship. And while it does get the point across that Fluttershy is being too tolerant of the way others are treating her, this scene always makes me feel that they went a little too far just for the sake of the story. Fluttershy is willing to go to the market to get him exactly what he wants, but she rather quickly runs into more troubles when she is unwilling to stand up for herself. To which Pinkie states that Fluttershy is a pony with a problem. Rarity even calls her a doormat, a pushover, and honestly, they're absolutely right. This kind of behavior is a persistent problem for Fluttershy, and really does need to be addressed. So we see Rarity using her charms to get the last bit of asparagus, and my goodness, it is both impressive and pitiful to see this happening. I would honestly lose a lot of my respect for Rarity if this was a normal thing for her to do, but she actually did reimburse him for the asparagus, so I am willing to give it a pass since she really was trying to show Fluttershy how to do something new. With Pinkie though, it's not so much about showing Fluttershy a way to stand up for herself as much as doing a fantastic tribute to Looney Tunes. Seriously, I would love to see Pinkie doing more of these in the future episodes. Now, Fluttershy trying to emulate Rarity is cute, but when she tries to emulate Pinkie, it becomes rather sad. I suppose this goes to show that when you lack self-confidence, even the best advice will often yield less than desirable results. Now, when Fluttershy presents the dish to Angel. Oh my goodness, this goes way beyond being spoiled. I know a lot of people really dislike Angel as a character, and when I'm watching this scene, I really can't blame them. Again, I realize that the writers are trying to show just how much help Fluttershy needs in being assertive. After all, when you are so overly concerned about avoiding conflict, then it can be difficult to get others to respect you. But they really could have gotten that point across without making Angel look like a complete jerk. Although I do like to see Fluttershy making a reference to Gone with the Wind here.
As Celestia is my witness, I'm never gonna be a pushover again!
When Fluttershy decides to attend a local seminar on becoming more assertive, we are introduced to Iron Will, and he is actually rather entertaining. Making him a Minotaur helps to expand upon the world building in MLP, and his no-nonsense attitude is actually a welcome change for a show that usually focuses on the sweet and adorable. And while some may disagree, I don't actually see him as a villain. What he is teaching here actually does work in building confidence and becoming more assertive. His business is about teaching what has worked for him, and while it may not always be the right answer, I can see how his methods can help others in certain circumstances. But then we get lines like, "Don't apologize when you can criticize," which does take things a little too far. However, this episode focuses on the lesson of finding a balance between the extremes, so it actually works very well for the story. And Fluttershy really wants to feel like she is in control of her life. Even before this episode, there have been many examples of Fluttershy wanting others to listen to her and respect her. And honestly, even her friends have sometimes been guilty of neglecting Fluttershy. So it makes perfect sense that she would want to try something that actually works. And perhaps for the very first time in her life, she doesn't feel like a pushover anymore. We may think that Fluttershy escalates her behavior rather quickly, but given what she has gone through, I don't find it all that hard to believe. I can remember when I was first watching this episode that Angel's behavior seemed really out of place. But watching it again, I started to notice that Angel is not the only jerk here. Take a look at some of these scenes.
I noticed.
I was like, oh, wow.
Hey!
Would you mind moving back? You're in my personal space.
I need that cherry no matter what it costs.
In that case, 20 bits.
20? Oh. Can I get for you today?
Honestly, it's not just Angel that has become insensitive for this episode. A lot of the background characters have become insensitive for the purposes of the story. Now, I suppose if all these different ponies have just become so used to the fact that Fluttershy never stands up for herself, then it would make sense why a few of them here have developed this kind of behavior. And that just gives Fluttershy all the more reason to take things this far for the sake of the story. But as Fluttershy is chewing out another pony who had no intention of being insensitive, Rarity and Pinkie believe they need to step in. They do understand that Fluttershy really did have a good reason to put aside her old self. But at the same time, they don't want to see Fluttershy lose what had made her so strong to begin with. And when Fluttershy comes to that same realization, she's actually afraid of what she's become. At this point, Fluttershy really believes that the only way for her to be assertive is by getting angry. And while locking herself away in her own home does seem a bit much, I do admire the fact that she's doing so because she's worried about what might happen to those around her. But that doesn't last too long, as Iron Will arrives to collect his payment. Both Rarity and Pinkie Pie attempt to delay him, but Iron Will is still the kind of character that doesn't take that kind of guff from anyone. However, we do see a greater amount of depth from both Fluttershy and Iron Will in this scene. Fluttershy surprisingly keeps herself in control here, and talks with Iron Will calmly and logically, showing that she does have the power to be assertive without being aggressive. It reminds me of the phrase, "A soft answer turneth away wrath." And Iron Will shows that he will be reasonable when others aren't trying to trick him. This is why I don't see Iron Will as a villain, as he really didn't need any redemption. He was already willing to be a sensible character when others were being mindful of him. Though I don't agree with some of the methods he teaches, I still think there is some value in what others can learn from his seminars. It just needs to be done in moderation and with respect for the feelings of others. And while I really like the message of learning to be assertive without being mean, there is another far deeper lesson to learn here. This was actually the subject of my very first video on this channel. Fluttershy'S weakness is part of her greatest strength. And nowhere is this more apparent than in this episode. Fluttershy realized that by removing her weakness, she had lost so much of what made her strong. This is not to say that she should continue to be a doormat, as this episode also shows us just how much of a problem that can lead to. But we can learn from Fluttershy's example of finding a balance when trying to overcome your weaknesses. Would Fluttershy really be so kind and nurturing if she didn't have this behavior of wanting to avoid conflict paired with such a deep well of patience and understanding? This kind of episode gave me a lot of respect for Fluttershy's character, as even after she had found a way to stop others from pushing her around, she decided it was more important to keep her kindness and her understanding. I really gotta hand it to Andrea Libman for the range of emotions that she puts in her voice during this episode. Not only is she giving Fluttershy a very aggressive mixture of tones, she also gives Pinkie a very believable sad tone. I often have to remind myself that these two characters are voiced by the same actress. And watching this episode again made me better appreciate the lessons it presented. I realized that the writers had to make a lot of the background characters into bullies to make this story more effective, particularly when it comes to Angel, and that can be rather distracting at times. But overall, this is still an episode that for me gets better and better with each additional viewing. And maybe it is because I can really relate to what Fluttershy is going through here. But I will stand by the excellent morals that it teaches. In the meantime, though, I would like to hear your thoughts about putting your hoof down. Given the behavior of Angel Bunny and even the rest of the citizens of Ponyville, do you think Fluttershy's reactions are in tune with her character? Putting aside the fact that Fluttershy really was trying to hurt their feelings, do you think there is any truth to the claim that Rarity and Pinkie Pie are the two most frivolous ponies in Ponyville? Can you relate to the struggles that Fluttershy has been put through in this episode? I would like to hear your thoughts about putting your hoof down, and here's to hoping that we get some more inspiring moments from Fluttershy in the future. I am DRWolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.
I insist it's 2 bits or nothing!
1 bit and that's my final offer!
Have it your way, 1 bit it is!